Hi, everyone. I'm Pastor Kate Ryerwelton, and I have the pleasure of serving as your Lutheran campus pastor at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. Thank you so much for welcoming students into your pulpits today on this LCM Sunday. The very good news is that we have preachers in 14 congregations this year. I think that's the most that we've ever had, and we are so grateful to you and your congregations for participating in this fun day. The challenge, of course, for adult forums is that I can't be everywhere. As the pastor of this ministry, it's my call and delight actually to get to interpret this ministry, to be in churches, out in the synods, and to really proclaim the very good news about God's action on campus and to tell the story about how close to 50 students tromp across campus in the rain and it's not so much the snow this year, but certainly the sleet, just to go to church on Wednesday nights, but also to explore what it means to live deeply into Christian community and life and to discern together how to love their neighbors, the campus, and the world. So, just a little bit about who we are as Lutheran Campus Ministry, Twin Cities. The heart of what we do is also the heart of the Lutheran understanding of faith and life. We're grounded in the unconditional grace of God and set free to love our neighbors. For LCM, for our students, that looks like a ministry that has long been grounded in Word and Sacrament, our Wednesday night gathering we call Pause. And it's shaped, of course, the whole ministry by the input and leadership of student volunteers. And then those students help us discern what God's love looks like at any given moment in time, and staff support those students as they figure out what it means to really embody God's love on campus and in our community. So last year, that looked like abundant outreach on campus as our students were particularly passionate about proclaiming God's love for all people. Our t-shirts say, God loves everybody, no exceptions. It also looked like a whole bunch of grad student neighbors from the health sciences building, doctors and dentists that are in training, coming to eat a weekly free meal with us on Tuesday. That meal has grown in number and reach this year. And as we learn more about the students that come, we are learning a lot about the food insecurity that graduate students face. So more on that later. This year, though, in part growing out of conversations we had with emerging leaders last spring, are the ways that we're loving the campus and the world is addressing students' deep concern for the polarization and divisiveness in our world. Our students are passionate about being true to their values and standing up for those values, but in ways that are constructive and humble and compassionate. They don't have a lot of examples about what that looks like in the world. And so we shaped our spring break trip that we just returned from around conflict resolution and peacemaking in Northern Ireland. But on campus, we've also been engaging this topic and are gathering a small group of Christian and Muslim and Jewish students to talk about anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and how we can really be allies in the fight against hate and violence on campus and off. And though we always hope all of this work will continue, we also have to be open to discerning with new leaders and to where the Spirit might be leading us and how all of that intersects with student passions. We have to be willing to let some of these things die so that others might rise. We've almost now built back to the numbers that we had before the pandemic. And even more important than the numbers is that we've built back to a really robust culture of student leadership that's taken adjustments and sacrifice from both staff and students. But our community this spring is really thriving and as a whole is buoyant in a way that's very inspirational to me. Our current leaders seem deeply rooted in God's unconditional love for them, and they really love each other and the campus well too, so they're fun to be around. And at this point, in the spring, for worship, we're averaging 45 to 50 students there. on Wednesday nights, and then through service opportunities, retreats, immersions, small groups, and our weekly free meal, we probably reach 100 to 125 people on a weekly basis. So it's a busy it's busy for the amount of staff we have and the amount of student leaders we have. And so now I'm going to invite your adult forum leaders to press pause here and see if there's any questions or clarifications that you might need from them at this point. Okay, welcome back. Another thing to know about our ministry is that we're shaped by three expressions of what it means to live faithfully in our context, which is the University of Minnesota. These three expressions, students came up with them about 10 years ago, and we like to say, we say, be curious, be real, be community. And that's a way for me and for the students to describe how LCM speaks gospel into both the joy and the excitement, the heaviness and the anxiety of campus life. We think of these as expressions, but also as practices that form and shape us. So the first one, be curious. This is foundational for us and for the students who find us, and we really do embrace this as a spiritual practice. In this practice of being curious, the first thing to remember is that the university's motto is driven to discover, right? And we're contextually rooted there. It's essential that as a church, we provide space for students to explore their faith, to ask good questions, to ask questions about their spirituality and their explorations of religion, but also questions about their vocation and what God might be calling them into, questions about their identity, who God might be calling them into, right? This is such a fertile time for all of that, and curiosity helps us stay open to what God might be doing in student lives. The second thing is that academia, at its best, is a place where ideas can be exchanged and where people can disagree. We know that higher ed is in a bit of a pickle right now, and I think we can either throw up our hands and roll our eyes, or we can work with young adults and work on our own hearts to practice how to actually be curious about people that are different from us and ideas that we might not share or agree with. Curiosity is always a practice, and it helps us keep learning and growing. And to have a Christian community be a place that models that is really interesting and important, I think. The last thing that's important to know, well, there's a lot of things important to know, but the other thing I want to talk about is that in our context at the U, religious dialogue is really shaped by a very black and white way of looking at the world. The secular nature of the university means that spirituality and religion are privatized and kind of ignored as a component of the student experience, at least from the institution's perspective. And then on the other side of that, there's more conservative, non-denominational Christian groups that really invest quite heavily in the University of Minnesota because they see it as a fertile mission field. And their theology is a more exclusive, black and white, in and out kind of theology. I think that they would agree with me on that. So given this whole context, nurturing and embodying a practice of curiosity where questions are welcome and we believe that God is active in them, that feels like an essential characteristic of our particular campus ministry, and also I think perhaps should be for any church in the 21st century. Our second attribute is be real. There is a culture of performance that leads to very high amounts of anxiety and stress for young adults right now. I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but it's true. Students are performing all the time. They're trying to get good grades so they can get good jobs. So they're performing in their classrooms, in their dorm rooms, so they can, have friends and be social. They're performing on social media, curating certain kinds of personas. Some even experience this with their families, not so much because they feel like they have to impress their parents, but because they don't want to let them down. They know how much families sacrifice to get them to this place, and they really want parents to think that they have it all together. And students need a place where they can shut that off, or at least table it for a minute, that compulsion to perform, and where they can name sin and brokenness as realities in their lives. Um, at the end of each sermon, I remind them of their belovedness in God's eyes, and of the kind of nothing you can do to earn it nature of our faith. It's so countercultural and is one of the most important witnesses on campus, I think. And that's why we really start with Word and Sacrament, because these young adults have to somehow understand that there's nothing that they can do or not do that will change God's love for them, that God's love for them is really just there. And that's our starting point. That's where we learn how to love the world. The last thing I want to say about this, which is just an addendum, is it's no a secret that mental illness is also a reality that so many young adults live with, and particularly in the hard times of the years, or years when a majority of people are really struggling with anxiety and depression in particular. This part of our ministry, being real, can throw things off balance a little bit. But we've also discovered over time that when students are really able to name their struggles and kind of see them next to the rest of their lives rather than as a descriptor of their whole lives, and when they're able to name them honestly in a community of people, that just the community can be healing in and of itself, in a community where they can be honest about where they are. And the last thing, be community. I mean, this is a campus of 55,000 people. The campus as a culture is a fragmented and siloed culture, kind of because it has to be. It's so large. Some of you may have heard me tell this story because I like to tell it. But a few years ago, before the pandemic, actually, a student emailed me and said, "Dear Pastor Kate, I am not religious, but I am exceedingly lonely. Please tell me, how does one get involved in your organization?" So I met with this student and we talked about some of his struggles, and we made an on-ramp into the ministry for him with some really great student leaders. And this community, boy, they just loved him. And he grew to be a really important leader in our community, and then a leader in another community. And he was baptized a while ago, in part because of the belonging he felt with us. But when that belonging was mirrored in other Christian communities, and he started to feel a belonging with God, and that changed his life. And I guess it changed mine. Students will say that this belonging often is the most important part, or the most meaningful part of the ministry for it. And I used to kind of blow that off. But the longer I'm here, the more I understand belonging as essential to our capacity to love and to serve in the world. Like, if you haven't experienced belonging in your life with God or with others, a community where you can be your whole self and feel that love, where you can love and be loved, will change your life. It can transform your faith. You just can't underestimate its power. So, okay. I think that that's enough for now. I'm so grateful for your warm welcome of our ministry and the people who care about it. This slate of folks lined up in front of you. I hope you have a really great conversation with them. Let me know if you have any further questions that I can answer. My email's all over all of the materials. Thank you so much. God be with you.